Hi, my name is Rafaela Buena and this is Street Smarts. I am on the streets today to talk to another person who has a ton of street smarts on a very specific topic that they've overcome, that they've gone through, and they can tell the story how they've done it now to us. Have you ever thought about intergenerational trauma and what it can do to people that we grew up around, to our families, but then also to us? Today I'm going to speak to Mars and they're going to tell us what was the story and how did they overcome and realize what it is that they have, the diagnosis. So we're going to be talking about CPTSD. So it's a complex PTSD, and it is also a complex topic in itself. So that's why a person who has lived it, who has overcome it, to tell us what is the street smarts that we should be aware of is the best to learn from. And it's a beautiful day again. We're around in Amsterdam. Amstel River is where we're at today. I'm gonna sit on that bench and wait for Mars so they can tell us their story. So join me.
Hello.
How are you?
Hey. Oh, sorry.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yes, I thank you, Mars. Is this your first podcast appearance, your first interview generally?
At least the first interview about this specific topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's exciting, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much for being open. We've chatted before, and I think your story is so inspiring, but also very deep in a sense of how you think about the things that happened in your life and how you've come to make sense of it all. So it's truly impressive that you've come today to this decision. Okay, I'm gonna share it with other people.
Course. No worries.
So tell me, who are you? Just introduce yourself.
I'm Mars. I'm originally from Germany. I've been in Amsterdam for quite some years. I'm originally from East Germany.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you wouldn't say East Germany anymore, but it puts into perspective how I grew up and what my history is when I say East Germany. And I am an entrepreneur. I own a branding and graphic design studio that focuses on sustainable and social impact clients.
Nice.
And
cool,
I
cool.
run a queer business club, which promotes and supports queer entrepreneurs in their endeavors and whatever they can still learn. Yeah. We help each other with our networks and our resources and so on.
That is super cool. And you've done that yourself, right? You've come to this country like new, and then you found yourself, the people you hang out with, you made a life for yourself here.
Yeah. From scratch, sort of.
Yeah.
I came with someone else, but when that ended, I still had to build a whole life for myself.
Yeah, of course.
It always does.
Yeah. So, okay, East Germany, is that not a thing to say anymore? Because I lived in East Germany, in Leipzig for a couple of years, and I could see the differences. I was in Freiburg, which is the West Germany, before in Cologne as well, and then later in Berlin. But when you're deep in East Germany, you notice, okay, people are different, they speak differently. How is that for you? And what does, just paint us a picture. What is it like to be from that part of the country?
Yeah, so I don't think I've been out of Germany for quite a while now, but we don't really say East Germany anymore, or Ostdeutschland. We still call ourselves Ossis and Wessis sometimes, but because we've been reunited now for over 30 years, we don't really use the terms anymore in like everyday language, but people still very much think of West and East nowadays, especially when you're more in East. I think you think about it more than when you're in the West, because the difference is still very extreme.
Salaries as well, right?
Infrastructure, everything is very, very different. And I think because there's such a big difference, people still think in those terms in East and West. I think especially in the East, salaries are different, income is different, job opportunities are different, infrastructure is not as good. And probably everyone has read here and there that the right-wing extremists are on the rise in the East.
Yeah.
And that is because of the stark differences still to the West, that it's not as, I don't know what the word is, like up to par as the West with income and just opportunities in general for life,
Yes. Yeah, that creates a lot of resentment, of course, in people, right? And they are like, okay, why don't we have access to better opportunities and development?
Yeah. People feel left behind from the government, sort of.
Oh, also that, yeah.
So it's a lot of them vote out of protest because they feel left behind.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh yeah, who can give me the easiest solution to my problems? That's usually the right-wing populists, right? Do they actually have the solutions? Of course not. But for them, so often comes also out of protest to vote super right-wing.
So in case somebody watching does not know what actually happened, that you at some point there was the west and the east of Germany. Can you tell us this historical part of?
Yeah. After World War II, the Soviets and the West allies split Germany into two parts, and also split Berlin into two parts. So Berlin was sort of an extra point in the map that was its own ecosystem that got split, because it was, and still is, in East Germany, but it was split also in itself. And then when the wall fell in '89, Germany reunited in itself and integrated the East into the West. So everything that happened in the West was sort of gone after that and was just integrated into the West and the West standard.
And that period is called the GDR, right?
Yes,
or that
German Democratic Republic that existed from 49 to 89, I think.
Yeah, that's, of course, in terms of history, and that's not a long time, but in terms of marking people, that is a long time, right? To create a big difference. So even though you're like, okay, now the country is united again, it's probably not that easy to just shake it off, right?
Yeah, it's at least, let's say, one lifetime that it was split, right? Like if I look at my grandma, who was born in 51, still alive, but almost all her lifetime was spent in the GDR.
Yeah. And what do you see that it marks people? Like what is the difference that you see in people having lived through the GDR? Are there traumas that stayed? Of course, we're also talking from the Second World War and everything that happened in Germany. How was that?
Yeah, I think the big difference nowadays that is maybe more practical is that, like we've already discussed, is just the income discrepancy and the wealth discrepancy. Because in East Germany, no one was allowed to own anything. Everything was owned by the government, by the state. And that discrepancy is still very much apparent nowadays. People had to integrate into the capitalistic system but they came into the system with nothing. And if we look at the more emotional side of things, then I think whereas the West Germans after the Second World War really worked through all of that Nazi trauma and authoritarian trauma and the Holocaust, like emotionally worked through. I think Germany did a pretty good job to work through that. That didn't happen quite as much in the GDR because it was very much focused on different propaganda and different political system. And also the main difference is that since Germany has been reunited, in my feeling, in my view, the trauma of the GDR has not been worked through as much as the Nazi trauma has been worked through. Because I think every German can agree, when they're in Germany at home, there's at least one documentary about Nazi times per day on TV. So you're constantly confronted with it, and you're constantly reminded of it, and you're constantly told you have to look at this and like work through it emotionally. Whereas the East German stuff, it didn't really happen in the same way. It was very much, the GDR is gone. Okay, now you integrate into our system and that's it. There wasn't really much emotional reflection on the time.
I see.
And I think it's very much up to the individual to do that. Whereas with the World War II trauma, it was more of a systemic support there to work it through.
How is it with the people around you? Because I can imagine that depending on family and the circles that we're at, maybe people do have a little bit more of an emotional intelligence to talk about things. Were those traumas, historical traumas talked about when you were growing up? How was it dealt
No,
with?
they were actually never talked about. And I think there's maybe also something, I don't want to generalize, but this I think happens in a lot of German families, West or East, that it's very much up to the individual to work it through. A lot of it because of shame and guilt that also, of course, came from World War II and who was a Nazi and who wasn't worked through because of the shame and guilt and all of that. And our home, there are some stories, but we never sat at a table and discussed any of it.
Wow.
More like when someone wanted to share it, they did, but it was never, let's all sit together and talk about it.
Did that affect you in any sense?
I mean, I can only, I think, now look back at my childhood and see how the intergenerational trauma affected me and how the not working through things affected me. But less so let's work for it together. That didn't affect me because it didn't happen.
Okay, but you mentioned intergenerational trauma. So what is that actually? Maybe it's a new term for many people.
Yeah, it's basically when so trauma gets passed down multiple generations from parents to children and then from the children to their children. And it usually happens when there's a wound of any kind emotionally that is not worked through enough by the individual. So then it manifests in certain behavior towards their children that then the children carries into their life and in their relationship with their children.
Yeah.
So let's say someone is very avoidant emotionally, how's the child going to be?
Yeah.
If you're not in tune with your feelings, then the child will probably also not be. And I think it becomes the responsibility of the children to work through it, so we don't pass it on to the next generation.
Wow.
And I think a lot of people can probably relate to this. Like, anyone who's in therapy, can relate
start
to
with your
this.
parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
And speaking about therapy, so you mentioned to me that you went through therapy and then you also got a diagnosis. Can you tell me what was it? What does that mean actually?
Yeah. So back then I went to therapy actually for something else. Was for a breakup.
Well, this is a very good tip. If you go through a hard breakup, go to a therapist. That's also a good thing.
But then, it turned out that I actually needed the diagnosis for what I was struggling with my whole life. And I always knew there was something, and I always knew how I was living emotionally wasn't what the average person experiences. But I just never thought I could even get a diagnosis for what I was experiencing. But then I got the diagnosis of complex PTSD, which basically means it's a complex form of PTSD. And the difference is, so regular PTSD happens from a one-time event. Let's say you get into a car crash and are brutally injured and have maybe a near-death experience, like really intense experience. You may avoid the scene of the crash, or you have flashbacks every now and then that bring you into like really high intense emotional state. Whereas complex PTSD happens when there's multiple traumas over a long period of time. So repetitive trauma, when you're basically stuck in a situation that happens again and again and again, then the PTSD becomes so complex that it's not just a one-time event.
Oh, wow. So that was actually shocking, right? To hear that.
Yeah, it was shocking, but
else.
It was also very good to hear because then all of a sudden I had hope again. Like, yeah, it was very interesting because I think just having had that diagnosis made me realize, oh, I could get better. Because I didn't even know that I could. I was so used to not being okay that, there was hope again, finally.
Nice. Oh, so happy for you.
Yeah.
It's really good. And just to also clarify, PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, and CPTSD, then complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
Okay. So you saw, of course, the CPTSD in your life daily in small things. What did that mean to you?
Yeah. So if I zoom out a little bit and look back now, because back then I did not realize that I had post-traumatic stress disorder, it meant having a skewed sense of self. It meant having trouble with interrelational stuff, so any type of friendship, relationship, like any sort of relationship between two people. And that I had a highly dysregulated nervous system. So my anxiety levels were constantly high.
Oh, no.
I couldn't regulate my emotions. I was constantly overwhelmed with my feelings. So those three things mainly were, looking back, the indicators that were there.
Because probably you were blaming yourself, right?
Yeah, I was constantly telling myself, oh, I was born like this. Why am I like this? Where is this coming from? I just could not. So the PTSD, the CPTSD was part of my identity, sort of. I could not distinguish between, oh, this is actually a mental health disorder, and this is me, my identity, who I am, because I had grown up in that way my whole life, and I didn't even know who I am without it, you know? Maybe when I was really young I knew, but between, let's say, age 8 and 29, 30, I didn't know.
How long was this process then, since your first diagnosis until now?
4 or 5 years.
Wow, that's quick actually,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of change happens when you get the right diagnosis and the right treatment. And the only thing looking back is that I would ever do differently is to go get the right diagnosis earlier.
Oh, yeah, but
who knows?
you don't know what you don't know, right?
No.
It's just that thing. We can also start blaming ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, why
Yeah.
not earlier?
And it's not like I haven't been to therapy before. I just never got the right diagnosis.
Oh, okay.
So I had been in other therapies before, but
Yeah, I see.
yeah.
Oh, happens to many people.
Yeah. I think you also sometimes just need to meet the right therapist where it clicks, and then.
So actually, it's much harder to get a CPTSD diagnosis, right? Because if you go through one very stressful, traumatic event, you can almost automatically think, oh, if I'm not doing okay afterwards, that's probably because of that event.
Exactly, yeah.
But if there was not one thing and it's just constant amount of... Can we call it, are they moderate or they're smaller things? Is that a right way to say, or are they also can be intense things over a prolonged time?
I think in my case it was more, let's say, moderate things. Like, it wasn't like extreme abuse or anything, but it was moderate things. But of course, like if you think about people that get locked up in the basements for years, you know, like those women that get kidnapped and then locked in the basements for years, and then they will come back with CPTSD for sure, you know. But it wasn't that for me. It was more all the trauma that came from living in the GDR. So it was more subtle, let's say.
So if you say, okay, trauma from living in the GDR, there's probably many people have some levels of it, right?
Yeah, I would definitely think so. And that's probably one of the reasons that nowadays the east part of Germany is so right-wing and so close-minded and in a constant fear state, you know.
What could be done differently, or what could people, you know, start to do some self-reflection?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think on an individual level, it's good to realize that what happened in the GDR, and I think this happens a lot, is that people don't see it as something so intense, but and I also never did until maybe 2 years ago when I really looked at my family and what happened. And maybe it also helped that I'm not living there anymore, so I'm a bit detached from the situation. Yeah, on an individual level, I think it's realizing that it wasn't just an easy time, you know, it was not fun every day. And then on a more systemic level, I think Germany should have some sort of system in a way that they did for working through the emotional stuff from the Nazi times, which they didn't have, you know. It's really like, oh, this is gone now. We don't talk about it anymore. But since that's not happening, I think it's more up to the individual to do that work.
And okay, so more right-winged in Germany, and that's of course not only in Germany, it's
Yeah.
in the whole world.
Yeah.
Maybe it's even more in other parts.
Yeah.
As a person who,
Yeah.
as you said, you were confronted with documentaries every day in
Yeah.
school a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what happened in Nazi times. This is why we're not repeating that. That's why we're not allowing that to happen ever again.
Yeah.
How is it for you as a German person living abroad and looking in the world at the world how it is right now?
Yeah, it's very, very weird. Especially to look at the US in this case, that it makes me realize that you can slip into some sort of authoritarian system very quickly without having any control, any agency over it.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, it happens, and then you're like, shit, now I'm in this, how do I get out of it?
Yeah.
I think for me, it becomes all the more apparent that we have to every day do something about it.
Yes.
Because I think what happened to me as well, especially, is I can relate in a sense that my family and my parents and grandparents were not so aware that, because they grew up in that system, right? They were not so aware of what is the norm, what is even outside of their world, because they weren't allowed to travel.
Oh,
They were only allowed to
wow.
travel in the Soviet
Yeah.
countries.
Yeah.
There was no international media. Like, all their media was like very propaganda. Like, they were only fed what the government wanted them to know, and they never could even see what's outside of it. So yeah, I think I'm finding more empathy for my family, in a sense that if you're oppressed that much in an authoritarian system, if you're denied the basic freedoms, then how can you not live in survival mode? You know, how can you not feel like your 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 nervous system can be calm? You know, like, so now coming back, I look at the US now and I'm like, okay, anyone that's living there in survival mode now, I have a lot of empathy for, because you're not going to make the best decisions while you're in survival mode, and you're not going to maybe be so available, emotionally available for your kids while you're trying to fight the system, or trying to survive in it. Sometimes you can't even fight, you're just trying to survive. So for me, I think, yeah, I'm just looking at people with different eyes, with a bit more empathy for their daily struggles. Yeah.
So revisiting the whys and what actually happened before, does that bring you comfort understanding the why all of this or people, the why people are the way they are, why they are avoidant or inaccessible? Did that help with your healing journey?
Yeah, I think it was maybe one of the last puzzle pieces for me to find acceptance and forgiveness and all of that for how I grew up and what I struggled with, and for the diagnosis, and was realizing when you grow up and live in a system that oppresses you and you don't have freedom, and you're really propaganda shoved down your throat, you can't be present all the time. You're trying to survive. So I think, at least from my inner journey, it gave me a lot more peace knowing that probably my parents and my grandparents did the best they could. Did that help not pass down the intergenerational trauma? Maybe not, but I think they really tried. So yeah, if that's one thing maybe people can take away from this, that are still angry at their parents for certain things, is maybe sometimes zooming out a little bit and looking at the circumstances of someone's life. Not everything should be an excuse, of course. If you get massively abused, whatever, of course that's not an excuse, but zooming out a little bit and looking at people for where they're at with the means that they have, I think helps sometimes, you know. Not always, of course, but we have individual and personal responsibility to heal our stuff and to not pass it on, even to friends or lovers or whatever, and kids. But yeah, looking at people zooming out a little bit helps sometimes, I think.
And this is one of the puzzle pieces, as you mentioned. What are the other things? So what
Yeah.
are the, like, having gone through the process, what
Yeah.
are the street smarts of healing of
Yeah.
CPTSD
Yeah.
that you've gained?
Yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of things. So I've had very specialized therapy,
Oh,
went to a
yeah?
lot of specialists, but also I think one of the main things that helped was reconnecting with my inner child, doing a lot of inner
Oh.
child work.
Oh, really? What's that?
It's basically like focusing on who you were as a child and what the child needs, because we're all still children in ourselves. We're trying to be authentic, and often that comes from who we were as a child, right?
Oh,
Like,
okay.
a lot of inner child work, a lot of like emotional regulation, but that is also a skill you need to learn if you don't learn it in childhood from your parents. So just learning how to soothe yourself, you know, how to not rely on other people to soothe you.
Oh, wow.
Doing workouts, you know, like all the self-help stuff.
Yeah.
It is actually true. Journaling, working out, not being on social media, it all helps.
Meditating.
It actually is all true. But of course, if you're someone that has that deals with extreme trauma, journaling is not going to heal you. You know, you need a lot of puzzle pieces that can make your life better. And I think the first puzzle piece for someone that realizes, oh, maybe this is not the norm, should be to go to a specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
or to a therapist.
yeah, so you went to one and you had this help and you were working on yourself, but you also mentioned that before the anxiety was there when being any kind of relationship with other people,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like, I don't know if dealing with other people is the
Yeah.
right word.
I think so. I think you
Yeah.
could say that. I think my anxiety my nervous system dysregulation was so strong that I could, for the first half of my 20s, I could not even go outside. I was always inside, had no friends, had no outlook on life.
Oh, wow.
I was somehow able to study. Don't ask me I made that work. But outside of that, I was very much in a very, very tiny bubble where basically it was just me in my own world. Yeah, but I think the body is pretty resilient. And already in my 20s, I went on my own like healing journey without any professional help. Eventually, I went to a therapist, but didn't get the right help there, but some help, which helped already expand a little bit.
The next step,
So I wasn't completely like a hermit when I came here, you know. I was still already a full human, but still like internally there was still a lot of going on that needed attention.
How did you break out of this bubble, even though you were taking these steps towards being a fuller person? How did you then have the courage? Because I imagine many people are still, even if it is because of PTSD, CPTSD, or something else, but the social anxiety is so high that taking the first steps of courage and not getting overwhelmed with the fear of being hurt, of being misunderstood, of fucking it up in a sense that you can never go back, maybe. That's might be what people are thinking, even though that's not the case.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. I think I was lucky that I lived in Berlin before and now here, which are very big cities where you also can be very anonymous. So I think in my specific case, I allowed myself to fuck up a lot of times, to really make a lot of mistakes with people, with myself most of all, and learn how to rupture and repair, sort of, you know, like how can I navigate conflict without abandoning myself, without abandoning someone else? It's something that even people without CPTSD have struggled with, you know?
Absolutely,
like, we all have our interrelational stuff that we still get better at. So I think I did a lot of trial and error with people. But a lot of it is also you just have to expose yourself to the situations that give you so much fear. Otherwise, you're not going to get over it. Like, the more you avoid the situations, the more you'll stay stuck in that zone where things are comfortable. And this may be similar to PTSD, where let's say you have a car accident in a specific spot. The more you avoid that spot, going past it, the more you're gonna avoid the feeling of never going back there, you know? Like, yeah, it's a really... But again, I think the best thing to do is to go to a therapist and seek help.
Absolutely, absolutely. But one thing that you mentioned was social media. So
Oh,
very,
yeah.
very practical street smarts that you've learned.
Yeah.
Probably somebody gave you a tip, but you probably realized yourself, right?
Yeah, I think it was probably the best and the last thing I did before I ended therapy was to delete my social media off my phone, at least.
Oh, yeah.
I still have my accounts, but I am not actively on there anymore.
Yeah.
Which is such a big difference in life. I now live like I did when I was 12.
Oh, that's so cool that that's possible.
Life is so much slower and so much more in the here and now.
Nice.
Which, especially for people with PTSD and CPTSD, is already so difficult to just be in the here and now.
Okay.
To not be spiraling all the time or with the anxiety somewhere else. That was probably the last puzzle piece that I needed to really be a healthy human being nowadays. And this is also for people that don't have CPTSD, is I think you notice the moment that you get on the apps, there's something happens to your nervous system that is not healthy. And I mean, we all know these whistleblowers that come out and say this is all engineered to do exactly that. So you buy stuff. Yeah, so that was really it. That I realized the moment I feel some sort of uncomfortable emotion feeling coming up, I was scrolling day in, day out. And a lot of people can probably relate. That now when I'm not on there, I get really bored, and I had to accept the feeling of being bored.
Oh, wow, I love that.
And then, because then you're like, okay, what can I do with the hour that I have between now and whatever meeting I have later, you know? Like, what am I going to do with that hour? I can't just be scrolling. So all of a sudden, all the hobbies come back that I did when I was a child, you know?
Like what?
All of a sudden, the creativity comes back.
Yeah.
And you look at things differently. You're not constantly taking photos of everything just for someone else to see it. You're actually way more in the present. Just, it's a different life. It's like really like life in the 90s.
Whoa. I am actually quite happy. I'm also a 90s child, that I experienced that 12-year-old
right?
self that you mentioned. But I remember there was this one day when my phone broke, and it would get fixed, but it would be like 2 days that I would not have a phone. And I remember the feeling of being so free, because there was nothing I could do. So it's not like, okay, like you can delete or can say, I'm gonna go 24 hours, 48 hours, 3 days without WhatsApp or something. But then you still have this guilt, kind of, what if somebody texted me? What if something happened? What if And that moment when my phone broke, I was like, there is nothing I can do.
You have to surrender to it.
Yeah. So this feeling was so beautiful, and I never got it again, to be honest. But even so, you deleted it, you made peace with it. You embraced it.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention was that also, especially I think on Instagram, I don't know how it works on TikTok, because I only used TikTok like once when COVID started, because I was bored. For like 3 weeks.
All were.
And then I deleted it again. So I don't know how it works now, but especially with Instagram, where it's engineered to make you feel so ashamed and not like you're enough, and you constantly need to be better, and you need to be perfect, and everyone else's life is perfect. Once you step out of that, you actually realize your life is pretty good.
Nice.
And life is so much more peaceful as well.
Yeah.
If you live in a very safe country like the Netherlands, and if you're privileged like me, life is pretty peaceful. The apps were telling you need to be better, you need to be something else, you need to look better, you need to make more money, you need to do this or this or that. And finding out who you actually are without all the algorithms telling you who you are was actually pretty meaningful to me, and very... I just feel like I can be me again. And especially in my healing journey with the CPTSD, it was definitely one of the last pieces of emotional regulation.
Oh, really good.
Because that's what the apps do. They dysregulate your nervous system to push the pain points to sell you stuff, you know.
Yes, but what do you say about then the other side of the coin, basically? So the apps can be putting us down in
Yeah.
terms of feeling that we're not this
Yeah.
beautiful, glamorous life, but on the other side, there's so much relating to the pain of others, or so
Yeah.
much, you know, like
Yeah.
also sadness and
Yeah.
horrible stories that are going
Yeah.
there, that I think many people seek that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a different app, maybe it's more on Reddit, but
Yeah, no,
there
I
are
get what you mean.
yeah. So
Yeah.
how is that for you? Because somebody going for a diagnosis might be also thinking, if I can just hear how it is for other people
Yeah.
and not feel alone. So what is, I think my question is, what is the level of
Yeah.
having know that you're not alone, that other
Yeah.
people are going through it, and there's nothing wrong per se with you,
Yeah.
but also not going spiraling down, that
Yeah.
takes
Yeah.
you down as well.
If there was another means of communication other than social media that could make that work for all of us, I would love that, but I don't think it exists. So I think, in a sense, nowadays, especially our generation, is able to find maybe their diagnoses on social media, or they become more aware, oh, this could be what I'm struggling with, before they didn't even know. But at the same time, I think it's good to question, does me being on social media so much and scrolling and hearing so much bad news all the time and staying in the spiral, in the loop of anxiety, does it suit? So if I want to show, then if I want to feel empathy and solidarity with someone who's struggling in another part of the world, does it help them for me to be spiraling and anxious about it? Or does it actually help if I get more grounded and feel more in my resilience? Can I help them better that way? And I think that's where I've come to peace with that. I can be of better help and service if I'm not spiraling all the
Oh
time.
wow, this is really good.
It's sort of like, you know, when you're in a plane and they say put on your oxygen mask first before you put it on others. I think that's very important, especially if you do anything socially impact, whatever it may be. It's good to look after yourself first, and then others, of course, should be balanced. But you can only give if you have something to give.
Oh yeah, that is so true. That is really, really true. So social media is a big topic in so many senses, Mars. But what about people also trying to diagnose themselves and then going completely insane? Also, maybe somebody now watching is like, oh my God, this is it. I have CPTSD because I never heard of it before. So I think we're also kind of searching for an explanation at all times. And also the fact that having an explanation can soothe and can explain so much and take the burden out of our shoulders. But how do you see that? And especially us both as millennials, maybe this generation is a bit extra with this.
Yeah. Well, I think this happens more so on TikTok, right? That there's within 3 days the algorithm knows exactly who you are and what mental health issues you have and stuff. And then I think it's good that the awareness is there, but I think what can happen also is a lot of misdiagnoses. So I always say, if you have a hunch, what's the word? An idea of maybe this is it, maybe it's also then time to go to someone and get it actually officially diagnosed, because the professionals know better, right, than some algorithm that is telling you this because it wants to sell you stuff, you know? A lot of the symptoms of CPTSD overlap with a lot of other mental health stuff and a lot of other disorders. So there's, of course, some sort of overlap and some sort of recognition, I think. I think we as individuals have responsibility maybe to also use that knowledge that we get from the internet nowadays, and having the accessibility and availability of the knowledge of it and the understanding and the awareness, more so than our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation. If you think about, like, I don't know, probably it's the same for you, but if you go on a date with someone who's not in therapy, you're like, But our parents' generation, it was the opposite. They're like, if this person is in therapy, I should probably not go out with them.
That. I love that. That is the red flag if the person is not in therapy.
So really I think it obviously then becomes our generation's responsibility and sort of also accountability to do something with that knowledge and not just use it as an excuse for every single character flaw that we have or every conflict we have with people, but it becomes our responsibility to become better and heal, and also to just not pass it on longer, and to become better parents as well in the future.
Oh yeah, so true. And especially us who are living the change to going from not having even a computer to then suddenly having a computer and then having a computer on our phones and being able to be online at all times. That's for sure doing something that our next generations will be talking about.
Yeah, and that also reminds me, maybe I said this earlier, but instead of scrolling and like raising your awareness about what you have, maybe then it's time to address it. You know, it's like one thing knowing about it and consuming the content about it.
Yeah.
And soothing yourself in a way, finding an excuse, an explanation for your behavior. But then the next step is to do something with it. You know,
absolutely.
I think that sometimes social media can drown out that feeling and the responsibilities, especially feelings. I mean, it's there to numb you. It's there to not make you feel anything. It's the same as any other addiction. The slot machines do the same thing. The thumb swipe is the same mechanism that activates in your brain. So question whether being on the apps, consuming all the stuff all the time actually helps with your anxiety or your depression. Is it enough to raise the awareness, or what's the next step? Is it to do something about it?
Yeah. And speaking of awareness, what do you wish that people would know about CPTSD, or they would understand more? I particularly never heard of it. It was the first time.
I think the good thing to hear is that you can heal from it. That it's not, I don't know to what extent it will be in my future or how intense it will be, or it's become very quiet and very mild. So I don't know to what extent it will be there in my future, but so I can't say I'm going to die without it when I'm 80. No idea if that's the case, but it is definitely, you can heal to an extent where you can have a normal life and you can have a enjoyable life and a happy life. So that's something that I think it would be good for people to know, because I think sometimes people also think about PTSD and then they're like, oh, that sounds like such an extreme thing that only really soldiers get when they go to war, you know?
Yeah.
But you can also get complex PTSD when you grow up in a household that wasn't so stable, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you've done a lot of work on regulating your emotions, your emotions. How is it? How did you do that? And what are tips on that?
Yeah, so I used to always have this mechanism of drowning out all my feelings, and this goes back to the social media as well. A lot of people now do it nowadays do too.
Like suppressing,
just numbing yourself, right? I did that in various forms. Luckily, I never had any severe addiction. I never smoked, I never drank, I never did excessively any drugs. I was very lucky with that, but in particular, regulating your feelings and your nervous system just means allowing for the feelings to be there and making space for them and not shutting them down immediately. Because when you shut them down, you swallow them up so much, your nervous system becomes stressed and heightened because it wants to express the feelings. Your body wants to physically express the feelings, but you're shutting it down. So what can then happen is you become depressed, you become anxious. Depression is literally repressed feelings that we don't let out. So I've learned to just allow the feelings to be there, to move through them, to let them, to feel them, to know they're not some. There was a good saying. It was, if the situation doesn't kill you,
Makes
the
it
feelings
stronger.
of it won't kill you either.
Oh, I love that.
So when you think, oh, I can't handle this, you can. If the situation didn't kill you, the feelings of, won't either.
Oh, that's a good saying. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So especially for people with anxiety, especially social anxiety, doing something repetitively, doing it again and again and again until your body learns, oh, this is actually pretty safe. I can handle whatever feelings come up out of that situation.
Nice.
Is a good way to approach things. Of course, there's different levels of intensity of CPTSD and the trauma that was experienced, so I can't speak for everyone, especially if there was active abuse, like physically, emotionally, it can be different, but yeah, letting the feelings be there and just also allowing any boredom, any, your brain and your body will find ways to express that, whether it be working out, going for a run, getting angry, punching your pillows, writing, drawing. Your brain and your body will find ways to express what needs to be expressed. That's something I think generally a lot of people don't allow themselves anymore. It's not just something specific to people with CPTSD, but overall, I think that's where the state of the world is at with
Absolutely, yeah.
Drowning out the uncomfortable feelings.
Even if it's just boredom, like you said before,
Yeah.
right? We're
So
like,
many
no,
people
I can
can't
never.
just sit there and be bored
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Whoa, Mars, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we end, is there anything else that you would like to mention about, so we spoke about intergenerational trauma, CPTSD, your healing journey, the street smarts that you've acquired throughout your life?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what I've learned is that we have an innate nature of healing, that no matter how dire and how bad things are, I think the nature in us and maybe the animal in us, there is a drive to healing, and things will get better.
That's so good. Well, thank you so much. How do you feel now? So now that you got it out?
Good. Very
yes?
good. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mars.
Thank
It was
you.
a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.